Hi, everybody. Look where we are. Look where we are, the space that we're in. Have you guys been to the Great Hall, just down the hallway that way? I don't know if you went there on your way in or if you've been there before. See if you can make a minute when I'm done talking, when I'm in the middle of it. Go walk through the Great Hall. It's just a beautiful space. This building was built 100 years ago, and we're still using it. By the way, when this building was built, Congress had two budget options, and they picked the more expensive of the two options. And we look out the window, right? The U.S. Capitol. It's just amazing. Everybody in the world knows that building. America grew up investing in its land and its people. Transcontinental railroads, interstate highways, the Erie Canal, public elementary schools in every town, land-grant universities in every state. How many people here went to a land-grant university, right? Some kind of a state college, university of this or that, name the state. I went to one. Does anybody know when that bill was passed that created those land-grant universities? During the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln signed that bill while the country was literally dividing in two, and he looked far enough ahead to give how many people was it in this room a chance to get an education they could afford. That's really cool. He was looking ahead. So we talked about elementary schools. We talked about land-grant universities. How many of you all recognize this? I-35 in Minnesota. You recognize this? New Orleans after Katrina, right? Anybody ever seen anything like this? Right, we know this business. That happens to be in LA. Has anybody ever seen that on the Capitol Beltway, on Route 66, on anything like that? Today, we are cutting off our nose to save the cost of Kleenex. We're cutting taxes and sitting in traffic. We're defunding the public universities and complaining about tuition. We import everything from solar cells to hybrid motor vehicles to oil. So there's the picture, and here's the data. This is stuff that you know. City drivers, this isn't even national data. City drivers spend 4 billion hours a year sitting in traffic. It's enough time for every member of the workforce to get a week vacation. We burn 3 billion gallons of gas while we're doing it. Another data point didn't make it onto the PowerPoint. It's in the report. Over the last 20 years or something like that, we had a 4% new road growth, new roads, new lanes, and 40% new traffic growth, new cars on the road. And when the cars are moving, of course, it's like 43,000 people die in accidents, another person's injured every second. And that's without counting the people that died in that Minnesota bridge collapse. 1 out of 4 bridges in the U.S. are structurally deficient or functionally obsolete. 1 out of 4. A quarter of the dams overseen by the Army Corps of Engineers have exceeded their lifespan. They need something to get them going, right? So this is the decay that we see about it. It's quantified a little bit. There's talk in the report. You see it when you walk around. You feel it when you drive over the potholes. And so what are we going to do about it? What can we do about this? Stop complaining, start building. Every $1 billion of public invest in public transportation creates something like 20,000 new jobs. Different data, different research around there, slightly different conclusions. It doesn't matter. It's something like 20,000 depending on which report you're looking at. Every dollar in public transport gets you something like $6 in economic returns. This is growth. This is recovery. This is what we need to get the economy going. We need a short-term stimulus. We need a stimulus right now. We need jobs, and we're still going to need jobs next year, and we're going to need jobs the year after that. Does anybody know? Does anybody want to guess what year that bridge I-35 in Minnesota? What year is it going to repair itself? Right? What year are the potholes that you do on your way to the supermarket? When are they going to repair themselves? We've got decades of neglect. It's going to take us decades to grow out of it. Don't think timely, targeted, and temporary. Think on the scale of decades. Public Works puts people to work right away. You get direct jobs, you get people laying concrete, you get engineers making plans. You have indirect jobs, you have the person in the bulldozer factory making engines. And you get the induced jobs, when the guy whose day job is to make the engines takes his kids out to dinner at night, right? And the person who owns the restaurant is happy about that. You get this reverberation all through the economy, and it starts with this kind of public investment, and we get to keep the bridge. We actually get to keep it. We get to drive over it. Tax cuts. Bob talked about this a little bit. There's some data in your packet, handout in your packet. People will talk about it later. Tax cut generate less stimulus. People pay off their credit card debt. It's not new spending. It's not new stimulus. It's backwards for their old credit card debt. They squirrel the rest away, and the money that they spend, probably it's on imports. A lot of it leaves the country. Tax cuts don't have the same kind of stimulus effect as this infrastructure spending. The jobs stay in the economy, the money stays in the economy, the concrete is laid in the economy, and forgive me, I'm going to say it again, we get to keep the bridge. So, out of concrete, let's move out of concrete for a minute. We look at the wind, we look at the stars, we look at the sun. Energy, right? Energy is a different kind of investment. A lot of you have probably heard of this Apollo Alliance. This is a Turtles and Teamsters kind of thing. Came together, I think, about 5 years ago now. It's business, labor, environmentalists. They all got together and they said, wait, clean energy is good for all of us. It's good for the environment, obviously. It's good for it's good for national security, because we're not shipping all this money to overseas regimes that don't like us, and it's good for jobs. Right? It's jobs here and now. We're going to be inventing the hybrid motor vehicles that otherwise we are importing from Japan. There's turbines, there's solar cells. The Apollo Alliance, I forgot to advance my thing. It's looking at $500 billion over 10 years, talking about 5 million high-wage clean energy jobs. It's high-tech jobs making the solar cells. By the way, that picture there of the windmill, very good chance that windmill was manufactured in Germany. We invented the solar cell here. If you've got one that you use around the house, very good chance it was imported from Japan, maybe from China. Doubtful that it was manufactured here. Why? Why does it have to be this way? Our entire industrial base is shipping overseas and coming from overseas. So we got turbines, we got solar cells, we got the simpler things. By the way, I was saying before, look out the window, look at the beautiful view of the Capitol. I was kidding you, don't look out the window. Stop, look at the window. It's a 100-year-old building. Stop and look at the window. I did when I came in. It turns out that it's a single pane window because it's an old building, and somebody not many years ago, it looks from the construction, put in a second layer of thermal glass on top of that window. Somebody did that. It still was metal frame pane, so there's cold is coming in from outside. An engineer thought of that. It was somebody's job. Somebody else installed the thing. How's your house at home? How's your office where you work? How are the windows? How's the HVAC, the furnace and the air conditioning? What's it using? This is internal stuff that we could be doing right this minute, and then we can be laying railway tracks and building railway cars, which, again, we could be manufacturing here. This is all stuff for energy independence. This is all the clean energy economy. These are all jobs. The Apollo Alliance guesses at 5 million jobs for this kind of investment. So this is a direction that we need to go. And then the ultimate investment, right? Underneath the solar panels, behind the wind, beyond the stars, underneath the concrete, whatever you want to think of it, the ultimate investment is the people, right? These are the land-grant universities. These are the elementary schools. Human capital is the way we say it. You got the people laying concrete. You have other people inventing the new hybrid vehicles, inventing the new HIV medications. These are all people. They all go to school. That's why 100 years ago, government subsidized this K-12 education, right? Free Appropriate Public Education is the acronym, FAPE. We all pay in, we all benefit from it. It started back then, but this is now. How many of you all have kids, right? Anybody have little kids? Who's watching them right now? You're probably paying somebody to do it. It's a job. What are we doing now as a society for our 2-year-olds? Barbara Lee was mentioning this. What are we doing for our 2-year-olds that's the equivalent of what our great-grandparents did for their 5-year-olds? They did K through 12. What are we doing for pre-K? What are we doing about the land-grant universities? What are we doing to make college affordable? What are we doing for the lifetime learning when the factory closes down? What are we doing for that? This is all stuff to think about. A focus on the kids for just a minute. This big out-of-pocket expense. Perry Preschool, you have all heard of the Perry Preschool study? Robust longitudinal study. It's been in business for 40 years now. And every dollar they spend giving high-quality preschool programming to these kids generates $7 in later social costs. The kids are half as likely to need public assistance. They're a fifth as likely to be arrested for committing crimes. They're 3 times more likely to be homeowners. You get the idea. They succeed in the modern economy because we spend this much money on them when they're this old. It's cheap. It's good bang for the buck. International comparisons, I didn't make a slide for this, but you all know how the U.S. is when we look at K through 12, when we look at our high school kids in reading and math and all the rest of it. We're 25th out of 30 in this and 27th out of 30 in that, and we just generally rank there at the bottom. Does it surprise you if you don't know how are U.S. teachers paid compared to teachers in other countries, right? We're just not paid as well. EPI did us the favor and ran the data. There's South Korea at the top, followed by Germany. There's the U.S. all the way at the bottom. Yes, it's smart data. It controls for cost of living and all the rest of it. It's done properly. And there's the U.S. all the way at the bottom. Does it surprise you to learn that increasing teachers' wages by roughly 10% reduces high school dropouts by roughly 5%? Is anybody surprised by something like that? You may or may not have heard of the data. More teachers, smaller classrooms, better pay, better results. As my kids might say, duh. And in case you think I'm getting squishy on you, we can get back to the concrete. 1/3 of U.S. schools need extensive repair. 15,000 schools have ventilation problems. The air is technically unfit to breathe according to one or another EPA standard. So if you want to be squishy, think about childhood asthma, think about paying attention in class. If you don't want to, think about construction jobs. Think about the new roof. Public investments are public goods. They affect everybody. We all need the roads and bridges in schools. We all pay in. Nobody has the overriding interest to get it just for me. I'm not going to build my own school or my own bridge, and I can't afford it. These are public goods. They're good for everybody, for the poor people who need work, for the middle-class people who want to keep what they have and maybe even move up a rung. Even the rich people, everybody needs this. They need architects to design their skyscrapers and air traffic controllers for their private planes. So how do we do it, right? How do we pay for it? It's expensive. Some of this has been talked about, but here's how we do it. We start with the stimulus. We think beyond that. These are long-term problems with long-term solutions. We're not just paying as we go. We pay as we go. At home, for our food and our clothing, we borrow to go to college and buy a house. That's how we do it. The monthly payments have to be affordable. That you pay as you go, but you borrow to buy a house, and you borrow to build a skyscraper, and you borrow to build a road. Later, we'll be talking about the infrastructure banks. We'll have entire panels on it. It's well, Bob summarized it a little bit. Some of the legislators who introduced it. Right now, we are just so much resting on our laurels. We are resting on our laurels. We are sitting on this magnificence that our parents and grandparents built, and we are fretting about deficits while the country is falling apart and other countries are racing ahead. The deficits are real, money isn't infinite, but we need to work on this now. We need to think in the long term. We need to put people to work. The kids need to learn to read and write. People need jobs. Families need a place to live. And a country this big needs 21st century power to power us so we can move ahead. So thank you for listening, and now let's get to work.